So how is the UK actually governed? It's a system that's been built up over 1,000 years, and honestly, from the outside, it can look like a total maze. Well, today, we're going to try and make sense of it all, piece by piece.
And that brings us right to the heart of the mystery, doesn't it? Think about it. Most countries, like the US or Germany, have this one big official document, the Constitution. You can hold it in your hand. But the UK? No, there's no single rule book. So, what gives? How on earth does a country run like that? What's holding the whole thing together?
Well, the answer is pretty unique. It's all about what people call the UK's unwritten rulebook. And to really get our heads around this, there's one key idea we've got to unpack first.
And that big idea is the word uncodified. Now that sounds a bit academic, but all it really means is that the rules aren't all written down in one single book. It's not that there are no rules, far from it. It's just that they come from all over the place. We're talking about huge historic laws like the Magna Carta, big-time court rulings that set a precedent, and, this is the really interesting part, powerful traditions called conventions. For example, there's a rock-solid convention that the monarch has to approve any law Parliament passes. It's a rule that everyone follows, but you won't find it written down in any official law book.
So what you end up with is a system that's, well, it's alive. It's flexible. It wasn't designed on a drawing board. It grew, piece by piece, over hundreds of years. And that's its biggest strength. And, as you can imagine, what some people say is its biggest weakness, too.
Okay, so if we want to understand how this whole thing actually works in practice, we have to start at the source. And in any modern democracy, that means starting with the people.
And the power of the people flows directly into one place, the House of Commons. This is the big one. It's where you'll find the 650 members of Parliament, or MPs, that people vote for. Each MP represents a specific town or city. And here's the key. Because these are the only people in the central government directly elected by you, the voter, they hold all the cards. They have the final say on making laws and setting taxes. It's basically the engine room of the whole system.
Bottom line, no big decision gets made, no government can survive, without the backing of a majority in the Commons. But Parliament isn't just the House of Commons. There's another part to the story.
And that brings us to the other chamber, the House of Lords. Think of it less as a powerhouse and more as a house of review.
And when you put them side by side, the difference is just huge. On one hand, you have the Commons, elected by the people, with the raw power to create or kill laws. Then you have the Lords. Its members aren't elected, they're appointed. They're usually experts in their field, scientists, lawyers, former generals, you name it. Their job isn't to be a roadblock, it's to be a speed bump. They scrutinize bills, suggest improvements, and basically ask the Commons, hey, have you guys really thought this through?
There's a great way to put it. The Lords are supposed to be a constitutional long stop, not a roadblock. Like in cricket, the player who stops the ball if everyone else misses it. They're a safety net. They can slow things down and make the government think twice, but at the end of the day, the elected House of Commons always gets the final word.
Okay, so we've got our two houses of Parliament, but that's the legislator, the lawmakers. How do we get from there to the government? The Prime Minister and the people who are actually in charge of running the country every day.
Well, this is one of the most important things to understand about the UK system. Unlike in the US, where you have a strict separation of powers, in the UK, the government and the Parliament are basically fused together. The executive branch, the government, is born right out of the legislative branch, Parliament.
And here's how that happens. It's a pretty clear chain of events. First, you vote in a general election for your local MP. Then, whichever party wins the most seats in the House of Commons gets to form the government. The monarch then formally invites the leader of that winning party to become Prime Minister. And what's the first thing the new Prime Minister does? They pick their team, their cabinet, and almost all of those people are also sitting MPs from their own party.
All right, let's pull all of this together now. Let's trace the path of power from the voter all the way to the Prime Minister, and, just as important, let's see how accountability flows back the other way. So here's the chain of command, or really, the chain of accountability. It starts with the people, the voters. You elect Parliament, specifically the House of Commons. That House of Commons then creates the government. But, and this is the crucial loop, that government is always, every single day, accountable back to Parliament. The Prime Minister has to show up and answer tough questions every week. And if the government ever loses the support of a majority of MPs, poof, they're out. It's that direct.
So you might be asking, okay, but what about the king? Well, in the modern UK, the monarch's role is really important, but it's not political. They are the head of state, a symbol of the nation that stands above all the political arguments.
They act on the advice of the government they invite to power. There's a famous saying for it: the monarch reigns, but they do not rule.
And that brings us full circle, right back to that first big question. This whole system, with its unwritten rules and ancient traditions, has somehow managed to last for centuries. It's incredibly resilient. But is that flexibility a genuine strength? Or, in today's fast-moving world, is a system built on convention actually a fragile one, in desperate